All right. Hello, hello. Hope you guys can see me. Awesome. Well, grand afternoon, wherever time of the day you are. I'm your friend, your girl, Tahiri, also known as TK Divine on some of my other sites, but I am glad to have you all with me. So we are going live today. A little different format. So if you are in the chat, let me know you are in the building, okay? Because we have a really good topic that I'm excited to talk about because it just really it's important to discuss because it doesn't get I don't think it gets a lot of shine in these spiritual streets. So let's get into it. So today's topic, we're talking about the dark feminine. Before I get started, if you haven't done so, make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel so that you are notified, well, along with hitting the notification bell so that you are notified when we go live and or just drop a video. Okay, you guys can find me on all social sites as Tahiri Divine, and then I got some announcements I'll be making later in the week, so make sure that you're on my Instagram and or well, on here on the channel too, because it'll be dropped on the community tab. But let's get into today's topic. So I want to talk today, as you guys see, dark feminine, guilt, shame, and grief. Guilt, blame, is it guilt, blame, guilt, shame, and grief? So these really not so fun words, not so fun emotions, not so fun situations, but it's imperative that we discuss these as it relates to the evolving of our human psyche and our experience and becoming more of the person that we want to be. Oh my, I got a little fly away, y'all. A little fly away, fly away. But yeah, so I want to get into topic of really right now about shame, right? So we're gonna kind of break this up into series so we won't bum rush all of this into one setting. But I want to talk specifically about the shame part and the grief and the guilt. But let's deal with shame. For a lot of us, we have developed shame, whether from our childhood, right? Whether it was from our familial circles, friend circles, groups that we were in. There's the community, society, right? There is this imprint of shame that is placed on us real early on. What is this going on here? And what I want us to do to tackle on about this topic is I want to refer you guys to a really, really good clinical researcher by the name of Brene Brown. She's one of my favorites. I love her. I've been following her work since her first TED Talk that she did almost 10 years ago, talking about shame and grief and guilt and how these particular emotions are actually part of the evolutional cycle of our experience as humanity. We talk a lot about cycles here on this channel because that's what the divine feminine is. The feminine in general, whether it's divine or mundane, doesn't really matter how you want to phrase it. The feminine is about cycles, and there is a process within the cycles that has a layer of dealing with shame, guilt, and grief. And I love to use the archetypes, and particularly goddess archetypes, that help us explore this part of our psychological understandings. One particular is going to be Demeter. I'm going to use her, and I'm going to use her more so in the grief aspect and maybe even guilt. Okay, so let's get into it. As men and women, no matter where we fall in our spectrum, we all experience these type of relational emotions, right? Or critical analysis, and where we have to deal with our experience as it pertains to feeling guilty, feeling shameful. An example could be as parents, right? Whether you're a single parent, male or female, partnered or not, you can still live a single parent life, right? And particularly in my personal experience in working with women, I have worked with women who are single parents that are married and still single parent, and that are just not married and a single parent, either because if they are married, it's either because their spouse or partner has a job that keeps them away, or they're just a non-active participant in the relationship and the rearing of children. So there is this level of shame that these individuals would feel because they feel shameful and guilty that they're in these unbalanced relationships, and that, well, I chose this relationship, so I have to deal with this, and I feel guilty that my children are experiencing this, or whatever. Or maybe one parent is a narcissist and the other, is really dealing with, like, how do I help my children? Why did I put my child through this with this person, right? So there's a level of guilt and shame that they will carry, as it pertains to the relationship, or maybe lack of relationship that they're in. And what I like to do is I like to take us away from blaming ourselves, right? But more so looking at how we can be accountable to how we got ourselves in this situation. One of the things I don't like is people will say, well, how is it that I attracted it? Why am I keep attracting these type of relationships or these situationships? And it's not about what we attract, because let me tell you something, the light attracts everything, right? It attracts flies, it attracts mosquitoes, stray animals, whatever. It's not about what you attract. It's about why you entertain it. Because we can attract a lot of things, but then we don't have to entertain everything we attract. So what I would like us to do as it pertains to confronting any shame or guilt for whatever reasons that we have it, right? For whatever reason that it's showing up in our life that we have to deal with this emotion, it is more so less about why you attracted something and more about why do you feel you need to entertain it? Because a lot of times when it comes to shame and guilt, there is a worthiness problem or factor that is alignment with that. So let's talk about our worthiness, right? There's so many different reasons why we think we're unworthy of something, and it's cycle and based on our psychology, why we make the decisions we make. I'm going to use Demeter, for example, because I think she's a really great goddess to work with, or archetypal energy and force to utilize in framing this framework of working through shame and guilt. Now, why Demeter, right? Who's familiar with her story? Just to give you a little briefing of her story, she's the mother of Persephone, who was originally named Kore. And as the mother, she was so doting over her daughter, right? So protective over her daughter that she did not prepare her daughter for womanhood. So there's many different versions of the story about when Kore was abducted or kidnapped. Um, some say she was a young child. Some say she was a teenager. The point of the matter, she was a young woman or a girl, and she was abducted. And Demeter was missing her daughter, and she felt so much shame. Like, how did I not watch my child? How could I not know where my child is at? And she felt the guilt. And during the seasons or the cycles of Demeter going through her evolution to get her daughter back, her daughter was eventually returned to her as an adult with a child of her own. And I typically like to focus on Persephone's story, but we're going to look at Demeter, right? Demeter had to confront the shame and guilt that she felt in the lack of preparation or the lack of attention or whatever it may have been that she was dealing with on the abduction of her daughter. Now, while that's an extreme story, it still relates to us on what we understand. So we're taking accountability, right? What Demeter was accountable to was the fact of how she showed up in her mothering, how she showed up in her viewing of her daughter, how she particularly was so overprotective that she didn't allow her daughter to really understand life. So when her daughter was abducted, right, she had to carry, as Demeter had to carry that shame and guilt, like, oh my God, I didn't prepare my daughter for womanhood. And then when her daughter returns to her, daughter's already a woman, like she's grown up and she has a baby and she's a mom. And I'm pretty sure she has her own issues of life that she had to go through without her mother's guidance, and that guilt and shame that Demeter felt. So how can we work with this energy as far as loving herself through fear, guilt, and shame? One of the things I love about I think she's a doctor, about Brene Brown. I mention her because she's done a lot of clinical research on this, and a lot of not so much clinical research, but a lot of intellectual research on these topics. And one of the most important things I think that I like about what Dr. Brene, is she a doctor? Let me make sure. Is she a Dr. Brene Brown? Okay, yeah, she is a doctor. Okay, good. Yeah, so I had to make sure I was like, oh, am I calling this one the doctor? She's not a doctor yet. But one of my favorite quotes, I guess I can say, from Brene as it pertains to these things is that I'm going to read it here. This is what she says about shame. It says, we desperately don't want to experience shame and we're not willing to talk about it. Yet the only way to resolve shame is to talk about it. Maybe we're afraid of topics like love and shame, but most of us like safety, certainty, and clarity. And I love that because what Brene Brown is talking about is what Demeter had to experience. And what she's talking about is empathy. We have to be more empathizing to ourselves and our experience, okay? So when we are facing guilt, when we're facing shame, don't blame yourself and don't beat yourself up with your words the best that you can. In fact, acknowledge that you're feeling these feelings, acknowledge the experience or the situation that has may caused this, whether you want to acknowledge what the other person's or person has done, acknowledge it, and then go back to yourself and give yourself empathy, right? Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with ourselves first, right? The important step when it comes to facing these emotions and going through the cycle of evolution with shame is you have to start with empathy. Where can I give myself love and trust in this moment, right? And when you are able to do that, you are able to not just look as the victim, because you have to acknowledge the victimhood, right? You have to acknowledge it. And that was something for me personally. I didn't like to talk about or identify as being a victim because I have this thing about statistics. I have this thing of like the anti-statistic. I don't want to be the statistic for this or that statistic or just statistics. That was my personal thing that I had to work through. I was like, okay, let's deal with this. I experienced this. And that experience, I was a victim. Now, do I have to stay there? No. Well, let me empathize for myself. I can be very hurt, upset with myself that I have attracted this person or this experience, but it's not anybody attracting it, it's about entertaining it. Well, let me sit with myself, let me love on myself, and let me give myself different words to use, such as, despite this situation I'm in right now, whether it's a loved one passing, whether it's a relationship that ended, that could be a friendship, a business partnership, a romantic, intimate relationship. Um, Honoring the brokenness state that you are in is going to be the first step of healing this evolutional cycle and allowing yourself to go through the process is to start there, right? And then to create space for yourself, whether you write, whether you sing, whether you dance, whatever it is that allows you to express some type of creative flow to harness that emotion, to release it. The next step is going to be giving yourself a new story. What is something I can take from this experience? What did I gain from this experience? What can I do differently now that I have brought awareness to this, right? And maybe there's nothing you can do differently, all right? And that's okay too. The process is of the evolution of the cycle is to allow yourself to be completely expressive in every state of emotion that you feel and every state of being that you will continue to go through as you are traversing through these waters because they're going to feel unstable. And this is why I think the Demeter character is interesting because she reminds me of the zodiac sign Cancer. Although she can be related to Virgo, because of the maternal aspects of it, I relate it to the astrological sign of Cancer. This is the energy of the Great Mother. This is the energy of waters. This is the energy of the deep psychology, right? Because Cancer is a very psychological sign. I think we relate that more so to Scorpio and Pisces, but all the water signs are psychological. And our emotions, which is just energy and motion, or psychological. And in dealing and facing and going through the depth, not so much the deepness, but the depth of our beingness and how we emote and how we relate to not just ourselves, but also to the world around us, will really give us a um, to me, I think it's, although it's untangible, you can see tangible results when you really allow yourself to be expressive and go with the emotional flow of that, right? So we went into acknowledgement, we went into accountability. And then lastly, which is not really lastly, which is still a continual flow of giving yourself a new story based on the lessons and blessings that you can gain from this. And there's always something you can gain from every experience. And it's not necessary to skip that step to find, well, what's the positive in the situation? It's not even necessary to do that first. I know typically we like to find the good immediately so we can kind of bum rush the hard part or the difficult part. But it's going to be really important that we really allow ourselves to sit with every emotion that unfolds, right? So that is the beginning of dealing with grief, guilt, and shame. That's one aspect of how to deal with it. And we're going to talk more about that in our upcoming videos. There's more about these cycles of how we can embody every part of our cycle, whether you're male or female. But if you're connecting with the divine feminine, it's going to be so important that you understand the flow and understand cycles. And we're talking about more of that within the week. I'm your girl, your friend, Tahiri Divine. Also go by TK Divine. You can find me on all social sites as Tahiri Divine. If you haven't done so as well, make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. We talk about the dark feminine, the dark goddess, the dark mother, and all aspects of the darkness of our psychology as a way to integrate the light and the dark together. If you are interested in more work and content like that, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to come join my newsletter. It's go to tahiridivine.com. The links are below. A drop box will fall and asking you to join the Divine Tribe mailing list. I don't email you guys a lot, but enough to give you guys more clarifying work and other things that's going on with me behind the scenes as it pertains to up leveling our life and the integration of our dark and light selves. I love you all. Thank you for joining this time with me. And I look forward to coming back as we talk more into this topic of cycles, grief, shame, and guilt, especially during this time of being in the darkness, the winter. For those in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in the winter season right now. So this is a perfect time to go through that inner wound and to face and to reclaim ourselves, right? Well, that is all for today. Until next time, much love to you all. Bye-bye.